So why do many, probably guys under the age of 40, hate some of my videos? Some of my videos, like one video I did, I got I think 8 likes and almost like 180 dislikes. And then my ranty videos about 32-bit float, I think they annoy a lot of people. And I get it, I really do. Um, but it's just we all have different personalities. And I'm 64, and I realize that yes, I'm gonna annoy some people, but some people I'm really going to make them happy. But I also feel that in teaching sometimes you have to give shock therapy, even if the person doesn't like it at the time. Because I know for myself, people that have been toxic to me, at the time I didn't like it, but months later, like what they said was in the back of my head, and then it really started to gel because I got so emotional. So I feel like when somebody hits that down button, when they're really happy or unhappy or leave this comment, calling me this or that, like it's in their brain. So in time they'll think about it. Now maybe I'm just deluding myself here, right? So I get it, okay. But the only point I want to make is yes, I understand that I'm disliked, but I thought about it very deeply and I accept all these certain things. However, sometimes you should. I mean, I would agree if somebody said, "Hey, but explain it in a nice way. Why do you have to be so negative?" And so in this video, I'm going to explain it in a nice way. And in a way, I'm going to direct this video sort of to this guy Max, who's in Germany, and we had a long conversation through chat on the 32-bit flow. It might have been a Louis Rossmann video, and then later an email. And then let me point out, by the way, Louis Rossmann is also under the age of 40. So I'm going to explain from my point of view why I have the views that I have. Okay, so I was born in 1961, and I got into photography when I was about, you know, 11, 12. My father built a darkroom, but he never used it. I use it all the time. And I've had a lifelong, it's going on over 50 years now that I've been doing photography. And so when I did it in the beginning, it was, you take a film, physical film, that had chemical on top of it, and you'd expose it, which would change the molecules, and then you'd develop it, and then you'd put in a larger, and you'd create prints, and there's lots of chemicals. It's just a very physical process. And in those days, the guru, the hero, was Ansel Adams. So Ansel Adams, what he did is he create a system to try and get the most dynamic range out of these physical materials that were very limited. And I was into audio also at the time. Um, you know, Reel to reel, what I always wanted, and cassette decks. Anyway, those weren't good. But anyway, the bottom line is that when I was young, for my generation, the whole, our struggles with the physical world, it was with chemicals in photography. It was with magnetic tape when it came to audio. And then even in a larger social context, we want to scale Everett. We want, go to the moon, though the moon's a little bit before my time. But you sort of get it. Like our thing was the physical world. And if you watch movies at the time, I think you'll see that. And things changed later on with digital. I'll get to that later. But anyway, the main thing is yes. I mean, that was how we saw the world, and that's how people did photography, film, and audio back then. It's all analog. So then digital came out, and I'd say basically for the consumer, it really started to come out in the early 2000s. So I was walking down the street the other day, and I saw this with the free sign, and I went and I took it, and the guy came out, and he's near my age, and he was saying, yeah, he bought it 20 years ago, and he never used it. And he couldn't use it now. Nobody really could use it now because it's FireWire. So FireWire was one of the first digital protocols. It was in the beginning we had serial bus. Serial cables, just very simple. There's no like logic or protocols. Well, there was, but you'd make your own. They were just limited. So the next up from serial cables, which again very rudimentary, and are still used today in hobby electronics, went to FireWire. So we had FireWire for a while, which is actually great for video because it had more of its protocol. Like the computer had to make bandwidth for the FireWire. But then FireWire was superseded by USB, which we have today, Thunderbolt, which is like another variation. So the world went away from FireWire. So you can't plug this into a computer unless it's an old computer with FireWire. So why did I pick it up? Like, why would you want something that can't connect to the computer? Because it can't connect to the computer if you understand these old technologies. So there's a lot I want to say about the world with this thing. So consider this. So we have the world, right? Like I said, it's the physical world, and where the digital comes to play. We get personal computers, and then a consumer device like this. Because in the film studios in Hollywood, they were already going digital, but it's professional equipment. But this is where it started to hit the whole consumer market. So when this device came out, and this was there probably might have been one or two just before this, but it's very early on. This is like one of the first. So as you'll see here, it says 24-bit, 96 kilohertz. So the earlier actual professional equipment was 16 bits, because I believe, and Sony was the bigger maker of this professional equipment. I don't know why my dog wants to play now. So the most equipment was 16-bit, and again, it's fine. Nobody really complained about it. You could have 16-bit now too. So 24-bit was definitely sort of like saying, hey, well, those $5,000 professional recorders are 16-bit. This is 24-bit, and it's 60, right? It's 96 kilohertz of sampling. And so when this came out, people were like, yeah, that's great. But I want to point out, 32-bit float was in computers in this time. There'd be no reason for it not to write to. I'll show you. My dog. I guess he wants to get on. Here he is. He's sort of a rescue dog. But anyway, so the computers had 32-bit float at the time, but it's very easy for them to create something that records the 32-bit float. But remember, we're early on where you have expert, well-educated audio engineers. It was a different world back then. Like I said, it was very focused on facts, on physics. You couldn't, like today with digital, there's a lot of like, oh, if you just iterate enough, you'll make something great. Like you'll fix a problem. Like if Elon Musk is like, oh, if we just keep designing Starship over and over and keep testing, we'll get to the moon. But there wasn't really that attitude back then. It wasn't the attitude like if you just keep working on the techniques of technology that you can get somewhere, like physics, the physical properties of materials. People were very, like I said, because you're coming from chemicals and film and magnetic particles with audio. So anyway, people were more attuned to that. So there would be no reason to write to 32-bit float, because you knew when you quantized the analog signal that it wasn't ever going to fill up any more than 24-bit, or even really 16-bit. Well, whatever, call it 24-bit, right? So there's no reason to go anywhere higher. And this is true today too, as I say in all my videos. But back then, it wouldn't even occur to anyone to do something, because you're just wasting 25%, 8 bits of data storage for nothing. And of course, back then, data memory was, was expensive. I mean, you just didn't get much. So the thing I want to, so anyway, when these new devices came out, so a couple things I want to say about this thing. The first thing is, if you see one on the street, grab it, or you see one at a Goodwill or whatever. So this has, two XLR ends with gains and pads. Like there's no pads on my Moto, and it has the clipping meters. It has 2 headphones jacks. My Moto only has 1. So, again, you can get more advanced ones, but the other thing I'll say is it has Toslink or SPIDF, forget what you call it. Just basically fiber. Fiber. It's basically like an infrared a light that pulses very quickly. It's digital essentially. So it's just fiber. It's just an early form of fiber that's a pure digital signal. And so you can take this. I just ordered online, so I just ordered for $35. I ordered a fiber to USB. So with an adapter, you could take the fiber out, put it into this adapter, and it will well, not quantize. It's already quantized. It will take the digital data and write it straight to memory in the computer. And people do this. If you look at high-end audio interfaces today, you will see if you pay over $500 or whatever for Scarletts or Motus or anything or any of these devices, you will see that they have in and out optical data. So yeah, so I mean, it's you take this and it goes into the computer. It'll work just like the Motu or anything else. And I believe that this, microphone plugged into this, will be the same quality as anything you can buy today. And oh, did I mention? Yeah, this is 21 years old. So in 21 years, digital hasn't really changed much. I mean, they very early on, I think, got as good as they can get because as I've said in my videos, many of my videos, so many of the problems are in the analog end, and the analog end they've been working on it for even before this. Let's say radio starts in the 30s, so they worked for 70 years. They were working on analog, and they pretty much, I think, figured it all out. So the so they came out with this, and a few things have happened in the past 20 years since this came out. So one of the things that happened is that some of these devices came out and they said, oh, well, we can do 192 kilohertz sampling, right? So in the sampling, the ones that had more sampling were sold. And so that's what I've seen in my life. I see that the manufacturers of technology, they just want you to buy the equipment. And they will say anything to get you to buy the equipment. That's why I get very angry about when they say 32-bit float fixes clipping or makes the gain knob obsolete, because they're saying something that's physically not true. And again, because I come from that generation or that viewpoint, to me, it's sacrilege. It's just sacrilege to say you can basically make an end run around physics, around Mother Nature. And again, you can say, oh, well, we'll eventually figure out an end run, and that's fine. But I'm just explaining from my point of view why I get very angry about it, because 32-bit float is a very specific data structure. It's not even a number; it's a formula for a number. It's a mantissa and an exponent and a sign bit usually. So it's not a number itself. The ADC doesn't output any sort of floating number. It can't, because floating point numbers can represent multiple real numbers, right? Like, you could say, right, 2 to the 1 is 2. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 to the 1 is 2. Or, I'm sorry, 4 to the 1 is 4, right? Or 2 to the 2 is 4. They're both the same number. So when you put something in a float format, you're making a man-made abstraction to represent these linear discrete numbers. So, and now that I've just confused myself where I am in this. Okay, so you had the 192 kilohertz. So that's what they did to sell equipment. They would tell everybody, oh, we can sample more. If we sample more, we'll get more fidelity. It'll sound better, because if you don't sample enough, you'll have all the stair steps, right? They'd come out those things. So it's not like 32-bit float is the first time manufacturers have lied about something. But with 192 isn't as much of a lie, because you could say, well, maybe more sampling would make it better, even if I couldn't hear the difference. I don't think anybody could hear the difference. But anyway, they use that to sell equipment. But now that everybody sort of knows that it doesn't sound any different, I mean, it's gone away. So you don't see it advertised as much. So they advertise 32-bit float because, again, there's been no real change in technology since this came out 21 years ago, or whatever, similar devices to this. And in 32-bit float, what you'll hear, well, when 32-bit float first came out, when that guy Dan Woodall or whatever from Rode did those videos. Those are the videos that began it for me, that really pissed me off. When he started saying this stuff about 32-bit float, the manufacturers just sort of said, okay, it's just 32-bit float, and that's it. And of course, I ranted and raved, and some other people pointed out too on the internet, but we're very, very small, yeah, minority. Because most people are like, listen, if you don't get it already, you're never going to get it. It's just such a complex subject. You have to really like study it or be into it to understand why it doesn't work. It's very complicated how sound goes from a microphone into whatever camera, whatever. Anyway, so the so first they said that, but then I think they sort of realized that okay, if we're going to take the gain knob away, because he just said, oh, it makes the gain knob obsolete, but when he came out with the video, he was just talking about the Rode Wireless. Of course, there never are really gain knobs usually in wireless stuff, so nobody really cared that much. But then when later devices came out from Zoom and Tascam and Rode and whatever, where they would normally have a, a gain knob, like this Tascam, right? So now if Zoom is going to come out with a 32-bit float recorder, right, it has no gain, right? So you're basically saying, okay, I'm coming out the device, I'm taking away a feature you had before, right? I'm taking away a feature, but you don't need it because I have this. Wouldn't the first thing in your mind be like, okay, if you're taking this away, like, what are you doing now to make it as good as that? Like, okay, I get it. You've got a new technology that means I don't need the gain knob that I have on this that I bought in 2004. But yeah, well, how do you do it? I mean, on this, I could just set the gain in the middle and just never touch it, right? So I don't ever have to touch a gain on this, and it works. Like, how's that different from this where there is no gain knob? And so what did the manufacturers do? They had to come up with something to explain why they have a new technology where you don't need the gain knob, and that's where the two ADCs came in, the multiple ADCs. So multiple ADCs is a marketing gimmick. It's a marketing gimmick to fool you into thinking that, okay, you had a gain knob, it was a pain to set, and you get clipping and whatever, and oh, we have a new technology to take away, but you have to say what that technology is, right? I mean, they can't come out and say, oh, well, we have a new gain, 32-bit float recorder, you don't have a gain knob, and just have no explanation whatsoever why all of a sudden you don't need what you've been using before or people have been using before, right? You have to come up with a reason. Well, one is 32-bit float, but like I said, now because you're actually really taking away the gain knob and some of the equipment, it has to be more than just 32-bit float, so that's why you see this two ADCs. It's marketing department. Believe me, no engineer. Now, in sound devices, they have they put out a patent for a thing. It's just a theory. It's not a schematic. It's not no proof that they talk about these multiple ADCs, but it's just a theory. I mean, I don't even think they tested it out fully when they came up with it. But whatever. I mean, whether you call it two ADCs or one ADC or whatever, it doesn't really make a difference because ultimately all ADCs work the same thing. I've talked about this in this other video, so I'm not going to really get into that. I'm just going to basically say that, putting the gain knob at 12 o'clock on this and using the Zoom F3, I don't believe you're going to hear much of a difference or notice much of a difference. So, but again, I want to explain why I get very angry about it, because again, 32-bit float is a very specific word. Now, if they said, oh, we have a new hyperscalar triple capacitor, I don't even like capacitor, it says a hyperscalar triple DSP gainless circuitry or whatever, something like that, I would have been fine with it. But they're basically saying, to me, it's like almost like they're saying, hey, the number 5, it's a number 7 now. We've taken the 5 and we made it a 7. Okay, it's a 7 now. I know you think it's 5, you're getting 5, but you're getting 7 now. And it just annoys me. And again, coming from this physical realm, well, I'm almost at 20 minutes. So let me go through my list and make sure I've covered everything. Yes, how did I, oh yeah, so I want to explain how, well, very quickly. So this mic, you'll see this all over the internet and radio stations all over the world. This is the Electro Voice RE20, and it's my favorite mic, and I've tried 20, 50, maybe 100, I don't know, tons of them. and I have an SM7B, but I gave it to my son-in-law. The So why do I like this? I don't know. I just like how I sound in it. This mic, this design, the materials in it is from 1968. This was made when I was 7 years old. Think about that, 1968, pre-digital. In fact, all the mics, the big mics used today, are pre-digital. And what you should think, I think what you should consider, again, if you're, this video is for people under the age of 40, if digital is so powerful, if computers can model all this stuff and whatever, then why aren't the mics that it's creating replacing these mics that were made pre-digital, right? It's not because just old people are insisting on using this. These mics are bought by young people. Young people on YouTube. The SM7B is the same thing. It's a mic from the 70s or 80s or whatever. So Joe Rogan didn't pick it out because he's some old guy, right? Young people pick old mics that were made pre-digital. And why? Because the engineers who built these mics worked in the physical realm with materials, and they experimented and they figured out how to get the best sound coming out of these materials. Digital cannot fix that. That's why, like another one of my bugbears, like Starship, in the 60s, the Saturn rockets, all of them took tons and tons of stuff to orbit. And Starship has flown 10 times and hasn't put anything into orbit, right? They keep saying, oh, we're going to figure out how to land it, and then we'll go to Mars or the moon or whatever. And, to somebody like me, it's like, I don't know. I mean, the first purpose of a rocket is to put something into orbit. What are you doing? But, again, it's just how a mindset is different. So from my generation's mindset, you're very delusional, wasting your time. You're just not going to get there. Now I'm not going to get down that whole rabbit hole. But I mean, again, from my point of view, I'm all for technology. I make my living as a software developer. I've loved technology. Like I said, I was doing a camera early on. I have this. I have this. Tons. You go to the basement. I have tons of electronics. I'm always playing with things. I love it as much as any young person loves it. But again, I came up from the physical realm, from the analog realm, and it's just as important as it ever was. And more importantly, it has limitations you just cannot digitally work around. You cannot iterate yourself around the materials that you have to make a microphone. You can design all you want and with AI and digital whatever and come up with a perfect microphone spec. But if you don't have the materials to make it happen, it won't happen. And that's why there aren't really any new mics, because the materials aren't there. It's not because these people didn't have computers and couldn't think things through. They just didn't have the materials. We don't have the materials. And maybe one day we'll have the materials, but we don't now. And I guess I wish younger people had more respect for that, thought about that more, like battle those limitations, right? So where was I in my my list? What did I put my list away? So last thing I want to say is how marketing really got me. And I think it still gets people to this day. And I'm embarrassed to say this because this screwed me up for years. So when I had early audio equipment, I was always like, do I change the volume? Because they were calling it volume. Do I change the volume here, or do I change it on the computer? Right? I didn't really know. So I just change it here, and it would sound good. But then the computer, I'd have to like make it higher generally. So I was always going back and forth, and I couldn't really figure it out. So I didn't truly understand that this was working on the analog end, because again, this is digital, and I wanted to believe everything is digital. It's another thing you got to realize. It's not like when digital came out, I was like, oh, I hate digital, analog, everything. No, I loved it. I wanted to do it. But even I got caught up in it, like, okay, well, this is the volume here, and this is the volume on the computer. Which one should I do? I didn't know. And it's always confusing to me. I'm like, why didn't we have like a process? Why can't we do one or the other? I never really understood like the gain staging and how it worked in a real way, because the manufacturers didn't come out and say, hey, listen, when you do this knob, you're changing the analog amplification of a very weak signal and all that kind of stuff, right? Like they don't come out and say, hey, by the way, your microphone signal is so freaking tinily small that you can only amplify just a small portion of it in an accurate way, and that's just the way it is. And you have to use this knob. And then once you do that, then you can manipulate it on the computer, but be careful on the computer that you don't make the volume high and it goes into something else where it distorts, where basically you have digital clipping, right? So, and again, digital clipping is something that is user error, right? There's no reason to ever digitally clip. Once you have your digital representation from the analog to digital converter, that's it. You should never, anytime you push the data past the largest number, you're doing it yourself, right? The microphone isn't doing it, right? You're not doing it when you're doing the gain knobs. Anyway, for years I was confused about that. And then another thing that I can't stand is like why in Windows or Mac don't they have a control? Like if you notice the audio controls in these computers, they're horrible, horrible, because they don't care. Like, you know, they just want to put the cheapest, like 1 cent little microphone connector into the computer and the circuitry and stuff like that. But even in the software, right, there's no, like even for webcams and everything, like there's so much they could do. They could get together with the industry, right? They could get together with all the audio equipment manufacturers, say, hey, listen, we're going to do a protocol for mic preamp gain. So this is a protocol, and when we set the gain in the computer, you'll set the gain on the device. Now, I think we do have that now in Osio drivers, right? So I think I can change the physical gain on my Rode NT1, right, through the computer, through Osio. So I mean, it is coming, but there's no standard Windows or Mac, or it's not implemented very well. And again, that leads to a lot of confusion with people because again, everybody wants to push you. The computer manufacturers want to push you into, especially these days, into the easiest possible use of the computer, and you know, so they can just show ads to you and get you to buy things, right? So yeah, I mean, computers aren't very good. I mean, they're not friendly to the artist in any way whatsoever. And that gets me probably even madder than this other stuff. So I think I've talked for almost like 27 minutes, and you know, again, so I hope in this video I explain why. Again, I've come from the land of the physical realm of analog recording, and to me, that's where it all begins. There'll always be analog. There's no such thing as a digital microphone or a camera. It all starts in analog. And because I understand the analog, I understand how wind manufacturers lie about doing stuff that they can't fix because you just can't. It's just in the analog realm, and there's just no solution to it. And then you try and come up with things like higher sampling rates or 32-bit float, right, or dual ADCs. That you're talking about things that are the exact same things that are in something 20 years ago. There's no difference whatsoever, really. And so, and then you're dumbing people down. And so it's like, and then I guess like what upsets me, so when I hear people talk about, well, you could do this or you could do that, like 32-bit flow could work in that way, I'm like, yeah, but like, who are you arguing against? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, to me, I'm like my challenge, my generation's challenge is with the physical world. Like your challenge is with yourself, but you don't want to like chase your tail, because that's what you're doing. You're chasing your tail. You're not actually advancing anything. You're actually going backwards. To me, this doesn't advance anything. I mean, it's a useful tool for certain people, but it doesn't advance anything because you stop understanding what happens in the digital, the analog realm. You start not appreciating the engineering that went into this in 1968. And how it has not been surpassed. So, yeah. So I hope you found this video interesting, and ask me anything in the comments. I'm always learning. I find this stuff fascinating. Again, I'm always learning, and I just wish younger people would recognize that they do have a certain handicap because they weren't brought up with this stuff. They have to go out. You have to go out and physically learn it. You have to go make an effort, because again, the manufacturers want you to think that everything can be done with their equipment, everything can be done with the digital stuff, and so they're not your friend at all. You have to go out and experiment and figure this stuff out, and I think if you do, you'll be richly rewarded. All right, 30 minutes, so good night.